I wouldn't recommend anyone does almost anything for 9 years. I hated my life. I hated my job. I hadn't really put much thought into what it would take. It's just, somebody else has been successful, so maybe that's a possibility. I'm Dale Harris, the 2017 World Barista Champion. I used to be really good at making coffee on a stage.
You know what? I think you're probably still really good at making coffee on a stage.
Find a stage,
Maybe.
put him on it.
At the highest level, everyone's going to be making really incredible coffee. The extra points for like the total impression.
It can be the thing that makes the difference, right?
We talk a lot about, WBC and what that feels like when lots of people watching you. There aren't that many people. And I think I would probably employ baristas who'd worked in a chain over something else because you learn things there. Right? People tend to do what they've seen other people succeed with. And actually, I think a lot of judges and a lot of baristas prefer a different thing. So that's what they should be serving. Do something different. Innovative process geisha, right? Being the only coffee that can win. I call bullshit on that. I think baristas are the problem.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Rowan Cook. I make coffee on the internet.
And I'm Ben Bicknell. I judge people who make coffee, but
Thanks.
only in competitions.
Oh, yeah, I cut you off there.
Yeah.
Apologies. And together we are
It's Just Coffee.
The podcast for people who know it's never just coffee.
Rowan, have you ever competed in a competition, in a barista competition?
I've thought about it a couple of times, but I didn't really know where to start. And I don't know, it felt like a lot of work, if I'm honest.
Well,
have you done it?
You're right. I have. I've competed a couple of times. No, they're pretty hilarious, like crash and burn moments here, though,
Okay.
because
Interested?
yeah, I bet you would be. When I say I crashed and burned, he's interested. He's dialing in. He's like, tell me more. Well, I think the first time was back in ye old 2005, and it was actually organised by a specialty roaster in Sydney called Dane's Specialty Coffee. And yeah, it was kind of hilarious in a really sad, crying, kind of hilarious way. But at that time, there had never been a competition on the west coast of Australia, which was where I was living, right? So there I was kind of preparing for this comp. I had to fly all the way across the other side of Australia, but also no one who I was preparing with had ever seen a competition at all before. So we were literally preparing this based off just score sheets. I don't think we even had the rules and regulations. So it was just a whole bunch of tick boxes. And I prepared by basically coming up with all of the different possible questions a judge might ask me. And, back in that day, as per now, judges don't speak at all. It's dead silence. So, turns out they don't say much. I lugged all my competition gear across the other side of the country. I actually turned up to the competition on a bus. And so competition gear boxes out of boxes from the bus.
Not the $100,000 worth of investment of getting people to locations.
It was pretty lo-fi. It was lo-fi. And got up on stage and then proceeded, when I realized that they weren't going to ask me any questions, to talk for like 16 minutes and 47 seconds solid. I was prepping for podcast live.
Oh my God. I'm guessing that's not what they wanted. And also, it's kind of impressive that when you were waiting for questions, you could still ramble for 16 minutes.
Well, I watched the first couple of people before me and just my whole face just dropped because I was just seeing them do this beautifully rehearsed presentation. Actually, I think the person before me in the competition was David Macon, a future multiple Australian champion. And he got up and gave this beautiful performance. And I'm like, oh my God. So I think what they say is, if you can't compete, judge. Right? Is that what is that?
Did you say that so I couldn't get it in there?
Yes.
You're
I
trying
got
to
it
cut
there
me
ahead
off
of
with
you.
that. I mean, it's tough crowd, especially following Dave. That would have been brutal. But maybe having a little more understanding of how the competition format worked would have helped.
Yes.
And that's what I want to dive into in today's episode. How to avoid people from crashing and burning.
Perfect. I want to solve that for other people so they don't get the pain. And thankfully, we've got another incredible guest joining us for the podcast today. And we are going to get the inside scoop there on how they scored things, how to best prepare for them, and maybe the broader impact that they can have on the industry.
Absolutely. And we've got someone very special. It's not just anyone. We have the 2017 World Barista Champion dialing in live from the UK, Dale Harris.
Woo! Welcome, Dale.
Now, don't go anywhere. We're going to have a quick word from one of our sponsors, Apex Lab. Elevate your coffee experience with Apex Lab at Mineral Concentrates. Apex Lab's precision-engineered formulas, including tonic, jam, and lilac, are designed to enhance the coffee's natural flavors. Not going to change it, it's just going to enhance it. It's going to bring out the vibrant acidity, the rich sweetness, or if you use lilac, it might bring out those delicate floral notes that you've been looking for. Trusted by world-class cafes and even barista champions, Apex Lab helps you unlock your coffee's full potential. Discover more at apexlab.com. Wait, where was that again, Sonam?
The internet.
Oh, okay. Thought he was going to say the website. Thanks. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsors at Eco Barista. The reason I sound like this is because they got massages at our stand at Mice, and so I'm getting a massage while recording this message for you. They're the best sponsor of the pod that we could have had. They have the best eco products. This probably sounds really pornographic, but it's not. I'm just getting a massage. They have the best eco-friendly coffee products. They got coffee bags that you can design yourself. They got cups. They got iced coffee cups. They got everything you need. So make sure to support them because they support us. Head to ecobarista.com.au and get 15% off your first purchase when you sign up. Oh, mama, that's good. Now, the first question that we have to ask is, are World Barista Champions normally this handsome? Because hubba, this is a good-looking guy.
It's
I appreciate that. And no, they're not.
Okay, yeah, good. I
I'm an
was,
exception.
yeah, I agree.
Oh, beautiful. We got the sound effects going. And it's 6 a.m. where you're dialing in, Dale. So thank you very much for making the time for us.
No, it's a pleasure. And I'm hoping that starting with this much energy at 6 a.m., my day is going to be mega. We're going to finish this and I'm going to be like, let's go.
It's all uphill.
Crushing the day.
Yeah. Because I tell you what, it's not for us. We, as Ben would say, crashing and burning. And it's been a long day and we're on our way out. But you've had an amazing career in the industry. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into coffee originally? A bit of the origin stories of Dale Harris.
Yeah, I think I'm careful with how I say this. I started as a home barista. I'm a recovering barista, right? I'm one of the few people I know who work in coffee that chose to work in coffee. You know, almost everyone is like, they're doing something else and then this side hustle becomes their passion. They fall in love with the customers or with the product or whatever. I hated my life. I hated my job. I was really struggling with what I was doing at the time, which was selling clothes for a company that I didn't care about. And I was in a position, really fortunate position where I could make a choice about the future, mostly because I was at the bottom of my career. You know, I'd done well with a few things. I kind of come back to earth a little bit. And I just had this opportunity to go, you know, what am I going to do with myself? I need to do something that I love, which I think it's a really special thing, right? It's a special thing to be able to have that choice around what you spend your life doing. Not everybody needs to do the thing they love. But for me, it makes things a lot easier. I think I would struggle to have a career if I wasn't like deeply invested in what I was doing. And so I really had to think about, you know, what do I love? What do I enjoy spending my time doing? And at the time, it was coffee. It was making coffee on the machine at home, which was awful. It was very cheap, but I had been kind of fighting it for a year and a half, you know, learning to make the best product that it possibly could. And there was something about that craft. I hate that word, but I think that craft of that process of learning to do something better, and coffee is constantly challenging. So you're constantly learning. And I think that's at the root of why I fell in love with coffee, that there was always an opportunity to learn more and get better and think about what I was doing. And I wanted to spend time doing that. So I found a way to make it my career. And that comes with pros and cons. For the pros, if I weigh the cons for them.
And you decided the next obvious step there was to go to Costa Coffee and start your coffee career with Costa. You did then have a big stretch at like Has Been as well, right? A pretty iconic kind of coffee brand there. But tell us, how did those two eras of your career help shape things?
I think, you know, going back to 2005 for your competition journey, like it's a long time ago and the world was very different. And I think particularly in the UK, we were a long way behind Australia. When I first considered working in coffee, I think there were probably 3 specialty shops in London. I think maybe nationwide, there were maybe 5, 10. And even then, you know, if you were judging them from our current position, maybe you would not visit any of them now, right? The roles were darker. The whole ideas of extraction and service and, you know, what good and clean were very different. But there was a beginning of something. But I did not live in London. I didn't live in a big city. I lived in the Southwest. So actually the only people with espresso machines with the chains. So it was a chance to make coffee on a real machine and maybe test out some of those ideas of what I thought I might like in my career. So it was availability. And I think particularly baristas who have that kind of like tenure, those like 15, 20 years, almost all of them worked in a chain. And I think I would probably employ baristas who'd worked in a chain over something else because you learn things there. You learn good things and bad things. Right?
That is, I've been quoted on this show saying that like a bit where I'm like, the best people I would ever hire came from a chain, because they would like listen to the feedback. They weren't trying to think that they knew better or whatever. They would come in and they'd learn, but they also had like systems in place for work efficiency and speed and serving lots of coffee. And you could get them in, you could teach them the little details and that kind of thing, but it was actually the efficiency in a busy place that helped.
And I've said this before, I started my career at a Gloria Jean's store. So another chain store here in Australia for sure. And I completely agree. I mean, they were such a great kind of entrance into the world of coffee preparation and basic hospitality. You know, they generally aren't as broad or as complex as like a restaurant hospitality. So yeah, I think there's a really great place for larger chains in the
There is a bit of a problem coming out now though as well with like some of these bigger chains now. They're starting to get these more like automated machines. So I don't know if it applies, or like maybe you'd need to look at the chain you're going to. Like I know at Starbucks, which is cool, they've got like the full automation with the steam wand, and it wouldn't apply as much before transitioning to like a specialty place with the same skills now.
Yep. But Costa said
I think with that, it's like those automated machines, you know, regardless of the brand, the machine doesn't define the coffee often. So there's opportunities there. The challenge is if you're beginning as a barista, it's really hard to engage with an automatic machine. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to feel that kind of pride over the product you're making. And so I do wonder, had I started in a chain without a traditional machine, whether I would have had the satisfaction to like power me through the rest of the journey.
Yeah.
I think I'm a lot more open to the idea of great coffee coming from any equipment than I could have been at that point as well. Right? You know, when you're young, everything is kind of binary. This is right, this is wrong. So I'd chosen not to work in Starbucks, right? Starbucks were the big bad guy already, as me being like an ignorant coffee person who just read a few books and read some internet opinions. It's like, oh no, they're bad, they're big, they're whatever. Now I'm like, you know, I would love 50,000 stores. And what could you do with that? You know, with that buying power. Like there's something magical there.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing the influence that some of these, you know, these chains have had. I think even on the formation, obviously, of specialty coffee. I mean, again, we talk about Starbucks. It's maybe not what we now kind of reflect on as purely specialty, but it was such a significant shift in laying that foundation for like espresso-based beverages and that idea of the third place and all of these other concepts that really underpin kind of what the specialty movement built on.
Absolutely. And look, we know you as the 2017 World Barista Championship, but there's a lot of work that has to go into that beforehand. I think you were competing for like 10 years before that and putting in that hard effort. Do you remember what it was that drew you to entering your first competition? Like, what did you expect going into it and how was it?
Yeah, I think, and there were two things bringing it together. So one is, you know, I had been working in a chain and I was in a kind of, not that remote, but I was disconnected from the community in the industry that I was reading about and learning about and wanted to feel a part of. And competition was at that point probably the easiest way to find other people that also liked the thing, right? So it was whether I was conscious of it or not, it was like this desperate, you know, search for community or belonging. And again, many people who have worked in chains will probably feel the same thing, that like, why am I the only person who cares about coffee in this store? Or why does nobody else care about the recipe? This is really important. And then finding accidentally or intentionally, oh no, there are other people like me. They're just in this space. So I think that was part of it. I was also reading a lot of blogs of, you know, baristas in Seattle and Sydney, whatever. That was kind of the inspiration. And, you know, it was a long time ago. So access to information was very different. There were not YouTube tutorials and videos, but there were blog posts of people, you know, touring the US to go to different regional heats and stuff like that. And the energy felt exciting. There was also a formative moment so before I got this job working in coffee. I decided that I was going to open a cafe. Like zero experience, zero real like concept of what that would mean. But I was going to open the best cafe. And I was going to have folk music every night. And still, one day we'll do this. And, this is everyone's like little cafe dreamers, right? I'm going to create a space that makes me happy and everything else can go to hell, right? There will be other people like me that will come. And so I was kind of researching that, talking to coffee suppliers. God knows what they would have thought of me. But it's the first time that I saw latte art was, a small roastery that is now incredibly successful. That was in a city close to me. The sales guy poured a Rosetta, and I think it was in chocolate powder. I was like, that is amazing. Because you can see the picture of what, a flat white with a Rosetta looks like. But when you see someone pour it for the first time, and it's so seamless, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. And he had been competing. And there was a trade magazine that was celebrating the success of this UK barista, Jimmy Hoffman, who had just like made finals in Trieste in that Barista Championship. And I was like, oh, like this is a thing. And someone who looks like me can do it. And I know we're going to hit on some of those kind of themes later, but it gave me the idea that there is a career pathway in coffee. There is, recognition and the support, and it's possible. I hadn't really put much thought into what it would take to get there. It's just, somebody else has been successful and this is the route they've taken and this is how they've met other people or connected with the community. So maybe that's a possibility. So there are all these little ingredients in there. I still believe my first competition was my best. In terms of, impact on me. And I still have friends from that first kind of regional heat that I am really close with, who many of them still work in coffee, and they've all been incredibly successful. So I think maybe there were 12 competitors, and I'm certainly like really close to 4 or 5 of those people still. And that's a good hit rate, right? For like 10, 15 years later. So I don't know, competition either like highlights people who are passionate enough that they're going to get through the stuff, or it creates them or impacts them in that way. And I don't know which is the truth of that statement, but it is meaningful.
I mean, what an interesting way would you say, you're saying the first one was the best. Did it kind of lose a bit more of the magic in a different way in those later years where you were more seriously competing?
So let's define best. I define best a lot, when I'm talking about coffee with people. I try and define it, I try and remove the idea. I learned the most that first year, and it was a purely positive experience. Mm-hmm. And some of that was like expectations. I had 0 expectations. It was really scary. I wasn't sure whether I would perform well or badly, but that also adds to the magic, right? And the more nervous you are, the more it's that kind of slow time, fast time thing, right? You feel every moment when it's a new experience. When you're doing something for the first time, you make a lot of mistakes. I do think the first experience of competing is the one that sets you up for the rest of your journey. So everyone's going to make mistakes. If you can overcome them, or if the feedback on them is supportive and constructive, that becomes a really powerful sensation. I think if the feedback had been bad or badly delivered, maybe it never would have gone back again, right? But I was hungry and I wanted to learn, and my expectations were few. So the downsides were quite low. It was also a small stage. No one was watching. I think even, we talk a lot about, WBC and, finals day and what that feels like when lots of people watching you. There aren't that many people, right? You're never going to have a job interview where the result of that is impacted by how you did in competitions. You might get a job interview because they're like, you competed in competition? Okay, we'll talk to them.
Yeah, man, I feel like I'm hearing you say that the first competition sets you up for your future and things. And I reflect on my crash and burn. I'm like, where am I at now?
Oh, God.
Maybe I realized a pathway that was not mine. So, but, honestly, I definitely resonate with what you're saying about, I don't know if competitors these days feel quite the same, but certainly at that point that I was competing, that connection with the moment, the movement of specialty coffee that was happening and the community that was around it was incredibly powerful. And it really did set up, so similar to yourself, people that I met at that competition. I think it might have been my first trip ever to Sydney. And like all of the other competitors there kind of took me in and kind of showed me around because I was visiting from over on the other side of the country. And there was a real camaraderie to it all that was just very welcoming. And I agree that those kinds of things are maybe some of the unseen elements of the competition. And I guess that's kind of why we want to get into the competitions today, because they are like a bit of a weird niche in some ways in our industry, right? They're not representative of the day-to-day barista world, and it's, you're obviously an incredible coffee professional, but it also doesn't mean that you're the best kind of production barista out there in the world. That's not what competitions are about. But so for people, we want to use this episode to really pull apart what are barista competitions and where there's value for them, but also where's the value beyond kind of the competition day itself. But let's maybe start by kind of defining it a little bit. Can you tell everyone who hasn't been around barista competitions that much, can you kind of break down what does it encompass? What are the different rounds of it? What do the score sheets look like?
A basic overview, if you were walking into a trade show normally and you saw this stage, what you would see from the audience is a barista rocks up and for 15 minutes they talk about coffee. And, for me, particularly at the beginning of my journey, that's an exciting thing anyway. Someone's going to share their coffee story with us. They will normally make espresso, cappuccino, or a milk beverage, and some kind of signature beverage, cocktail, whatever, creative drink. And they'll serve it to a set of judges in Barista Championships in the WBC. It's 4 sensory judges will taste those drinks, and they will be scoring them based on quality, but also how well the experience they get matches the promises the barista has made. And there are also technical judges who are watching how the barista is making the coffee and scoring that. And there's other people kind of hanging around making a big thing of it. So there's MCs and stuff like that. It's weird. And the best competitors can make those 15 minutes just fly by. They weave a story. You just want to know what's coming next. And most of us are pretty good at doing some of those minutes. And then some of the minutes are pretty boring. It's hard to make making coffee behind a machine exciting. And there's this constant challenge with how you do that, how you make it engaging. So I've seen amazing competitors who can just own that stage. And it's such a wonderful thing to see it. I've also seen amazing baristas who just shut down and make coffee like they're in a busy queue and the music feels out of sync and stuff like that. And, we all have our worst natures. I love an awful barista competition. I love, I love and hate someone going over time. I love, no, it's spilled. How are they going to do it? But it's not really, that kind of vicarious, like Schadenfreude or whatever. You're not really judging the individual. You're judging like the absurdity of the situation.
Yep.
And afterwards, it's all good. It's all fine. And actually, I've seen some pretty car crash competitions and then met the barista like years later. That was an obstacle they overcame and whatever. They still had a positive experience. Not always. But
What's, without making someone feel too bad, as long as you know that it's okay, what's like one of the worst car crashes you've kind of seen? Or is it too mean? We don't have to go into... Well, it is this crazy thing when it's like at the end of the day, it's also funny. It's just coffee. It's like, we're making coffee.
Yeah, that is true.
I think every time it is somebody who's really wanted to push the boundaries, and the closer you are to pushing the boundaries, the reward and risk are so high. And competition, all competition kind of pushes people towards that, right? So, people injure themselves when they're sprinting or swimming or whatever because they want to push harder. And so often it's the best baristas make the biggest mistakes. And I've made a fair few of my own. The best one I've ever seen, and I will not mention names, but it was a barista I really respect. I have seen him compete at the highest level. He had a whole routine about blending and like quality had raised another level. So he was live blending with like 17 coffees in different pods with like 2 grams in here, 4 grams in here, whatever. And it was all like laid out. And definitely something went wrong with the organization of his many, many pots of coffee. And you just saw it happen on his face. Like he was starting strong. He was saying the words. This was going in here. This was going in here. And then suddenly his hands stopped moving.
I can feel
and he
it.
kept talking for a while and he tailed out. And then he basically like opened everything, threw everything into a bucket and just went for it.
Oh, no.
One shade short of greatness, right?
Yeah.
And even that, like mistakes like that can happen and you can still overcome them. Right? You can still make incredible coffee and score highest because it is just coffee. And if you're warm enough, you present the right information at the right time, the wrong information at the wrong time doesn't really matter.
Crazy kind of pressure cooker environment. I mean, like the classics I've seen is like there's a music problem. Like this is pretty common. There's a music problem and the competitor has so anchored their routine to their music
Well,
that
they know the time as well, how long to talk.
But then they just freeze.
Yeah.
Like there's music stops and they stop, or they've jam-packed with how much they want to say on stage that there is no room for movement, and then a shot just chokes. And there's like, you just see it, they're just looking at it and they're just like, I am serving that because I have no time to make anything else.
How much, like, I feel like the performative aspect of it just keeps elevating and elevating, going up and up and up. But actually, like on the score sheet, like how much does that narrative performance part of it play into their overall score? Like if you were to walk up and just say the words and say, this is this coffee, it tastes like this, here it is.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a kind of a relatively small portion of the actual weighting on the score sheet, but it can be the thing that makes the difference, right? Between, truly taking one of the top places and not. I think Dale mentioned there's technical judges and sensory judges, and there's 4 sensory judges, and each of them gets served one of each of the beverage rounds. And they're breaking it down on different components. So like on the espresso round, they're looking at like the taste experience. So that what we just talked about before of sweet, sour, kind of bitter, or sweet, acidic, bitter kind of balance. Kukumi, yeah. We didn't go there. It hasn't been officially introduced. But then also the flavor descriptors, which is what Dale is saying, that promise that the barista makes, that here is what you'll taste. So there's a lot that's very sensory. That's where the major weighting is. And then there's expertise and then knowledge at the end. That, I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, Dale, but it's got a small score box, but I think its influence definitely ranges over the rest of the score sheet as well, like emotionally influences.
I think it's one of the things where that can push you over the edge, right? It's like you can, at the highest level, everyone's going to be making really incredible coffee, and the difference in scores is going to be quite small in that range. But maybe the extra points for like the total impression that someone gives, or the presentation skills, will be the extra thing where it will push a barista above in scores. I also think there's something about the feeling when you're judging someone. And this, an idea when I coach people a lot, which ties into music and ties into the order you're serving the coffees, is momentum. It doesn't need to be entirely logical or entirely true. Nobody fact checks the barista competition. Maybe they should, but no one is like really diving in deep. But the judges are sat there and they're ready to go on a journey, and it needs to feel like it's going somewhere. And so the right presentation skills and the right like momentum from the music and whatever can build this positive experience that the judges are eager and excited to taste this next thing. The promise has been set, and that is fantastic presentations. And when you have judged someone like that, you feel it. You feel it more. And that's kind of what we want to create in our guests. I think it's easy to get into the weeds of, what all those different scoring categories are and the numbers and how they're interpreted. But generally, competition is testing skills that we think baristas should have, right? And we can argue whether or not they are the skills that people should have. But one of the skills is communicating. And you see it in great shops when people communicate really well, which doesn't mean communicate a lot necessarily. It's that empathy, and it's being able to speak with the right timing and with clarity and stuff like that. That helps customers enjoy coffee. That helps create good experiences. And I do think competition trains public speaking, right? And, so one of my advantages in competition compared to many of my peers was I was more comfortable on a stage. I'm not sure why. Or no, let's correct that. I look more comfortable on a stage. I get incredibly nervous, but my energy, like in that situation, kind of funnels into like this fake, like extrovert characteristics and like speaking louder, speaking more clearly. That's where my energy goes. Some people shut down, right? And you can train people to fix these and address these. Every great barista is nervous, but if they can channel that nervousness and that energy in a way that creates a positive experience for the judges, they're likely to score higher. And that's something that I would also want to train in my baristas in my store. I want them to be nervous when they're making coffee, but I also want them to engage with the customer, not the machine.
Now, going back to 2017, the year you throughout history that will be remembered as the greatest year in WBC. Can you
It
tell
is when it peaks.
yeah, that's when
Promise
it's.
you.
I've stopped watching after that. I'll tell you that much. How much preparation is going into this? Like, when do you start preparing? What goes into it? How many days a week? From what I hear, it's just wild.
Yeah, I think how much you do and how much you should do, different questions. I always think that people are capable of preparing a lot more than they should and putting more effort. Quantity is not quality. In my case, my nationals were later that year and the worlds were quite close. So I won my nationals. I had low expectations. Different to many competitors, I only got to the world championships once. Right. There are lots of competitors who win their national championships 3 or 4 years running and they get better and better each year. I have placed highly in my nationals many years. And some of this is like you retell your story, your narrative, like after the fact, and you tell different stories. So the year before I won my national, I'd been competing for like 9 years with a break in the middle. And it was easy to tell a story about like stubbornness, but also like what's wrong with you. I wouldn't recommend anyone does almost anything for 9 years, right?
Yep.
Do something else, grow, change. I was quite successful in competitions. So I'd made finals, I think every year, except the first year that I competed. And I got very close in my second year, even though I didn't have the skills to back it up. There was something about my presentation and the coffee and the timing. So I placed second my second year competing. And it was so in touching distance. It's like, this is possible. This could be me. If only I could do X, Y, and Z. So I was hungry for it. And each year afterwards, I competed. I was highly motivated by it's so close and partly motivated by it's so far away. And there were ups and downs along that, definitely after every competition, almost every barista is like, never again, never again. The weight of that effort and how much preparation you put in can be really draining, but it's also what pushes you to succeed. And you can succeed without winning as well. So what I would say, and it's really hard from this like position of privilege where I won the whole big thing. So my whole story feels like it ends in this positive place. Every negative experience or every time that I didn't win, I also grew. So much of when we talk about like the car crashes and the things like that, so much of that is down to the pressure we put on ourselves. And if we could remove some of the pressure from competition and the potential ideas of rewards or what you want or what you think it should be for and whatever, if you just remove that pressure, everyone will compete better. I am convinced that no one on stage has ever made the best coffee of their lives. Certainly with that coffee, they've always like made that coffee better somewhere in training or in preparation. And it's just about pressure and that kind of life moment. But that's also powerful. And there is something, in our increasingly digital world, there is something so real about someone putting themselves out there on the stage.
One interesting thing that you see a lot of is, did you have a team at that point helping you out?
Yeah. So on a question on preparation for that competition, it was 12 weeks. From when I finished my nationals to my worlds. I had an experienced team that I had built over the years of competing. Sometimes I had coached them in their competitions. Sometimes they had coached and supported me. And they were not formal official coaches. It was my best friend. It was my partner. But we've been on that journey together a long time. So we knew each other really well. And we were already in the spirit of competition from the nationals going into the worlds. So it's somewhere between the 12 weeks and maybe 16 weeks or 9 years was the preparation for the world.
It's fine.
That's how long it takes, kids.
Now it feels like a lot of people have like these teams or this. What are the general like principles that you've seen of people competing? Because obviously you have the ones where there's like a roastery, right? And they take the star barista from that roastery and the whole roasting team kind of does that. What are the other ways that kind of, because you've coached as well, like what are the other ways that kind of these teams are formed?
It kind of really depends on, I think, like Dale's saying, the people who are around them and naturally in their circle and where maybe they need added support, I guess, to supplement what's needed. I mean, there's a couple of key phases of the competition. One is that preparation stretch that we're talking about now is what do you need to hit to prepare really well to compete? And then there's the actual competing phase. And that's, you need a slightly different kind of group of, you need different things out of it. So Dale, if you were going to be putting together a team or maybe you are part of teams for competitors now, what do you think is the key areas that need to be supported?
I mean, first of all, no one can do it on their own, right? It is impossible to serve a drink and then assess a drink immediately. And you need somebody who's watching and says what it feels like and stuff like that. So there's just like the structure for the competition. It's impossible to do it entirely on your own, and it would be unhappy, right? Well, the greatest benefit from the competition is you will spend some time with some people that you care about and care about you, really focused on a thing, and the energy you create together is really valuable and really memorable. I would say you need somebody who has seen the competition before and ideally has tasted another competitor's drinks, who understands the standard so you can have a meaningful conversation about it. And if you don't have that expertise in your coach or that experience in your close team, it's so valuable getting that expertise. So find a judge, find a previous competitor, ask them if they'll sit in and watch your performance before you do it, because the feedback will be so different and so useful. Even if you don't use any of it, it will challenge you, and you have to think about, Ben said at the beginning that, before his first competition, he was thinking about all the questions the judges would ask and whether they're able to ask them on stage or not. I wish they could. They're going to be asking those questions, and you want to know what those questions are, because otherwise you're preparing for a different game. Or often, particularly with more experienced competitors, you're fighting a game with yourself about a previous score sheet or a previous judging experience, right? Rather than the one that's in front of you.
And it seems so high now. How does anyone, I know we're talking about people who are competing, but how if you're just like a barista that has these dreams like you did, a decade before you won, of like, I just want to do it. Like, do you just do it and fail and, learn from there and meet the people? Or
kind of like Dale was saying, every entry is an opportunity for growth and learning.
Yeah.
And I think you've just got to remember that there's a barista competition, or there's any competition, only one person wins it, right? So then what do you do in the likely scenario that you are not that one person out of a field of 20 or whatever it is? I mean, I think you go into the competitions generally all around the world, the level is quite high and competitive. And so I think you go in with I would say if you're doing your first competition, what are the building blocks that you're going to try and learn out of this? And it's going to be like public speaking, training preparation, being on stage, being able to juggle presentation and technical making of coffee. But I think that's where you'd probably start. And going back to the team side of things, I think you've got these different areas. I guess it's kind of like what we're talking about and skill sets. So there's the script and the speaking side of it. So the communication piece. There's obviously the coffee selection. There's some of the, I don't know if you'd call them like the operational, like logistics stuff of like, where's all of the accessories and who's cleaning them, or who's going to go and buy them, who's going to get them all organized, right? You've got your concept or like the theme, which kind of connects in with the script, but it's like, what's the idea that you're exploring that you're super passionate about? When you kind of get all of that together, they're the things that often get carved off as support in teams. Is like someone's going to really focus in on roasting your coffee incredibly well for you to use on stage. Someone's going to be there to help you refine the language and the words. If you are lucky enough, as we've said, to have a bit of a team of people around you. But I think that this is also a really cool opportunity for this to spread the impact of competitions out to a broader group. Has that been your experience, Dale?
I think there's also, not everyone needs to compete. I wish every barista would compete once. I think they would all benefit from just that kind of thought process, even if it's a smaller competition with less, time, energy. It's an interesting feeling to be on that stage. And I think it's a positive thing that teaches you something about yourself, good and bad. I've learned awful things about myself as well. But I think everyone should try it once and should not be afraid of that first time. And a lot of that is like a bigger life learning. It's okay to fail. Yep. You have to, right? It is the only way we learn, and you have to make mistakes, and it's really easy to insulate yourself from that in your day-to-day. If you have any interest in competing, you should do it once and have low expectations. You're going to learn something. It's going to be good and positive. But there are also lots of roles there in competitions and lots of journeys that people can go on if they don't find the stage a comfortable place to be. And like you say, you need organized people. Most of the best competitors I've met are not as organized as they look. They are surrounded by people who are much more organized, much more focused, who will manage their shit and pull it together. I am bad with recipes and lists. I'm pretty good with execution. And that's because I work with people who are really good at it, and I picked up things that I could do along the way. And that shared journey is so important and so valuable. If we think about competition as a vehicle for growth, that growth happens in different places. It happens for different people within your team in different ways. But competition or the challenges that come out of competition will teach you things about the people around you as well. And you will drag things out of them that you didn't expect and they didn't expect to give because of their process. So it can be valuable in so many different ways.
So you had 3 months from national comps to the Worlds in 2017.
And if we feed into that, I also have my huge, the weight of my ego. And for some reason, I decided that in those 12 weeks, we were going to start from zero in terms of the constructing that routine.
Great plan.
I could have taken... Yeah, it's definitely the most efficient way, right? You have a thing that works. Let's ignore that and go again. So it's a weird dream, but it was my life's dream, my life's goal to stand on that stage at WBC. It wasn't to win, although I had dreams, but the real aspirational goal was I want to be on that stage with all these other baristas that I have seen. I believe I'm good enough to stand on that stage. I believe, I can do it. And that would be really exciting. And it's weird because I'm super anti-waving a flag. I didn't really want to represent the UK or the Union Jack as a deeply complicated, messy flag. But I did want to represent my community, and I did want to kind of reach my peak there. I never really thought about what would happen if I got there, but it really felt like it's this one chance, this huge pressure. And I just wanted to perform at my best. And whilst the routine that I had won the nationals with, I was proud of it. I was proud of the coffee that I'd served and the things we'd done for it. I also felt I hadn't pushed my boundaries as much as I had in previous years. I did not think I would win, right? I aspired to make finals. I thought I would probably come 13th, 14th, and my biggest fear was I would come 47th or DQ'd 62nd or whatever. But there's a lot of imposter syndrome that happens and all these other psychological things. But I had zero expectations to win because there were so many great baristas competing who had been at the Worlds many times. So it's I'm not going to win, but I have 15 minutes and I'm probably not going to be here again. Right? It was so hard to get there. So if I had one chance to stand on the stage, what do I want to say? How do I want to bring it? So I really wanted to push my boundaries and challenge myself to get the most out of that short experience. And again, part of this is tied to that pressure that we put on ourselves. You can work hard. You can do anything for 2 weeks, right? You can climb the mountain. You can do whatever if it's only 2 weeks away. When you get into the end of your nationals, you've been doing it for 10, 12 weeks or 6 months or whatever you've been in there. And it's it's just a few more weeks. How hard can we push it? The deadline. So there is so much that is unhealthy and weird about competition, about any competition, about this urge to win a gold star or whatever. There is something so powerful and motivating about deadline or about the finish line that does help you do stuff. So all of the learning that I've had through competition, I should have been able to have that learning in other ways, but the structure of the competition enabled me to do it, enabled me to push harder, enabled me to dig deeper. Some of it's just about this external validation or this external kind of testing point of the score sheet or of the judge. It's you need that, I guess, that mirror to reflect something back. And if that's not there, you're just looking at the forever. Why do I start today?
The blank page problem. So out of all of this preparation and kind of stepping up onto the world stage like this, are there some key learnings or tips that you think that you could share with others who are maybe looking down that same pathway?
Let's start with that blank page problem. No idea is good enough until you work on it, right? You've just got to choose one. And some of the themes that have won championships are so ropey, right? They're so ropey if you look at, but in the moment and when you are in your competition, you build on them and you build on them and it begins to tell a story and have momentum, and they always have personal value. Find something you want to think about and learn about and talk about for the next forever, and you will come up with something that feels good. I think you can have a theme which is very simple, particularly your first competition. It's why am I in coffee? Why do I enjoy this? What is exciting me about coffee? They want it to feel like there's momentum. They want to learn something about you, but they're not really scoring the true deep value of it. They're there to have a good experience. So take away some of the weight of that and choose an idea that you care about. And alongside that, I'd say, and this is so hard, be decisive. That kind of 12-week thing that I did for the Worlds was really important because 12 weeks doesn't leave you a lot of room to get lost. Particularly when you get to the Worlds, you're going to want a beautiful table setting and you're going to want to print materials that say what your coffee is. That means you have to decide your coffee at least the day before. right? Because you've got to print it. And realistically, it needs to be like you start going backwards from that final date. And this is one of the things you learn from competing a lot is, all right, it takes 2 weeks to build your table setting or whatever. It also takes 2 weeks for the coffee to rest, right? So you need to finalize your recipe to have it written down, the roast profile and whatever, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before for you to have finalized the flavors 2 weeks before. And so all those decisions start going backwards and you end up with, okay, so I have 12 weeks to prepare, but I have only 4 weeks to have finalized my coffee, finalized the roast profile, decided on some of the moving elements and whatever. There's no right decision, so make a decision and start chipping off the things you need to do and locking it in because then you've got more time to work on it. The question marks and uncertainty can kill your progress. I also don't think there is a right coffee. And if you keep searching for this perfect idea of coffee, you'll never get there. And certainly I felt that I was serving the best coffee in the world at various times. And then the next year I served something completely different and felt that passion just as equal. Because by the time you're 6 weeks into working with the coffee, you love it. 8 weeks in, you hate it. But 6 weeks in, you're like, I cannot wait for people to taste it. It is going to change their lives. It's great. And you only get that by working with a coffee for that long, which often we don't have the opportunity to do, right? You have your blend maybe in your shop that you work with forever, but it's hard to fall in love with the thing that you're spending so much time on. And then you'll have a single origin there for a week. You dial it in, you're serving it to guests, and then another one comes, right? And actually you learn a lot working with a coffee for a while.
So out of those things, is there something you can do to kind of truly set yourself apart? Like there's a lot of elements that we can take in, but is there any tips you have for if you were trying to take home the win, is there something that helps set some of those top competitors apart?
All right, going all the way back before someone's first competition, when you're building your team, whatever, 2 essential ingredients, read the rules. Super important. They're all available now, which is great for the bigger competitions. Yeah. It's such an easy thing to say. So I also So I won in 2017. It was a long time, the heyday of competition, whatever, my glory days. But I then didn't compete again for years. And I just started recently, the past few years, competing in one of the other competitions, which is Coffee and Good Spirits, which is a cocktail and coffee one. I love it. I have so much fun with it. The pressure is different for me now. And I think I'm much more relaxed about it. So that's a positive experience. I did not read the fresh rules. I printed off the rules the year before I competed in it. So this was 3 years ago. Printed off the rules, went for it. I came second in the UK from a small field. And I was really excited. I was like, yes, I'm going to do this again. And I have so much fun. I'm going to make it to the Worlds again. The next year, there was every year the rules change a little bit. There's a constant evolution. So the competition is very different now than it was 20 years ago. But if you look year to year, the changes are all small step changes. I looked at the rules. I checked which rules they were using. They're using the new rules. And I looked at the score sheets that I printed out the year before, or the rule sheet that I printed out the year before. They looked the same. I looked at the summary of changes. They looked the same. So I was like, cool, good. And I did not read the rules again. And I broke a rule and I, infused a spirit, which in that competition, you're no longer allowed to do, but the year before you were. And that meant I scored pretty much 0 on some drinks and didn't make it. And it's the one thing that I said to everyone is read the rules, watch somebody else compete. The videos are there now, which they weren't when I was first competing, but see what it looks like. Watching somebody else compete is so valuable. You see the structure of it. You see what you're trying to do, what you're trying to emulate. So it's really valuable on the journey. The more competition you watch, the more different takes you see on this kind of limited structure. But the thing that sets people apart, and it's so hard to kind of explain whatever, is you have to do something different. And it's so easy to see competitors who have worked really hard, pretty much replicating what somebody else has done, or even worse, what the average of every performance they've seen is, right? What does everyone do? So I have to do that. And if you're doing something that you've seen other people do before, the judges have also seen it before. They may have seen it done better. They've certainly seen it done in a more authentic way. You really have to find your authentic, unique thing that only you can do or only you would do. And, one of my favorite champions competitors to watch was Agnieszka, who was the world champion in 2018. I watched also when she competed in Seattle, when your national, I don't know, compatriot, I'm not sure what the right word is, but Sasha Sestich.
Yes, Sasha,
Another amazing champion. And also another champion who took like a long time to get there. It was like chipping away at it for years and years and years. It was like one and done when it got to the world. Agnieszka also competed there, and she didn't break the rules, but she did push boundaries, and she came, mid-30s, right? She was always authentic. She was always doing something that nobody else would do, and only she would. And I do feel most years that people in the finals really stand out as like most of the other competitors. You could probably put in a box and go 80% of their routines were the same. The finalists tend to go in lots of different directions. And that's fun and that's interesting. And there's always evidence that actually we could push the boundaries more. So find the thing that you really want to share and go deep on it. And you might not win, right? But at least you'll finish it feeling like it was you rather than something else.
So we've talked about competitions and that big journey there, and how you often need a team to really help support you. And one of those key people to support a competitor can be a coach. If someone was looking at bringing a coach on to help them prepare for the competition, how do you go about choosing a good coach? What's the categories? You've been a coach before. You are a coach now, I think.
Yeah.
What would you say a competitor should look for?
I think, first of all, you need someone that you can work with, right? Somebody who shares your values and shares your energy, and different people have different energies and styles of working. So you need to find someone that you're willing to spend lots of time with. And that can sometimes be someone who challenges you a lot, right? And you have to be ready for that. But if you can take that on, that's really powerful. You need to have trust there. So you need to be able to take feedback from that person and not too personally and use it. And so there's kind of two ways you can go. You can go with like a stranger that you really respect, who's going to, treat you harshly. And you can reach out to people like either someone within your business that you really respect what they do and you want to spend more time with them and learn more from them. And you can kind of test out that relationship and then go towards competition or use it as the vehicle to do that. It can also be someone from outside of your business, right? Expose yourself to a different skill set, a different set of knowledge. And people enjoy being on that kind of mentor-mentee journey. And people often are much more giving than you think they will be. So if there's somebody that you really respect from your biggest competitive firm and you're like, I want to see what they're doing, ask them. The worst thing they'll say is no. That's one way of doing it. The other way is somebody that you really trust from within your life, somebody you work with or a partner where you already know how to communicate together. It's making sure that, like Ben said earlier, that all those different skills are there. So if you as a team with your coach is helping you like with organization, whatever, but you're missing some of the competition skills, find somebody who can provide some competition skills and add them in. I believe the best coach for most competitors is one who can help bring out the answers from the competitor rather than dominate them with their opinions. It's easy to have opinions. It's easy to critique anyone's performance and say, I would do it like this. I would do it like that. It's much more challenging to pull out the unique and individual characteristics of someone's barista style or whatever and help them find the answers. Most competitors know what they want to do. They just don't have the confidence to do it. So the best coaches, in my opinion, are the ones who can really listen and see their barista and go, okay, how do we make that happen? And how do we shape that into the structure of the competition so that you get the most points out of your passion? So yeah, I would generally look for somebody who loves competition and wants to see you succeed and bring something new to it without having ideas of what that can be.
What I've seen that's been a really successful little space for finding a good coach is when competitors look to another competition format for a coach. So like if you're a barista competitor, you go and approach one of the top brewers competitors and ask them to be your coach. They know the competition energy, the vibe, they know preparation, they know tasting notes often, and you could do the same for them. So as an entry level into this space without having to go and shell out for maybe an expensive, paying someone to coach, you could have this kind of community support where you're not in competition with each other, but they can really add that value. So that's a nice way to go.
That's a great idea.
Okay, so you've gone on this big journey. You've managed to win the 27 World Barista Championship, which I will say as well, it's not just competing once, it's competing 3 times, which is just crazy and such another mental game, right? You have to go into the opens, then you move through the semis, then you go to the finals, and you've got to kind of pass through all these barriers. After all of that build-up, there was a decade of competing up to this point. What impact has it had on your life and on your career?
I think competition feels like it's looking for the best barista in the world, right? That's, part of like what that title sounds like it is. Actually, the best baristas in the world are often the ones who come at the other side because the opportunities it gives you to learn are so huge. I traveled to Origin many times. I traveled to other like barista communities and seen how people are making coffee and businesses with 2,000 stores and, single kind of temples to specialty coffee that people have been running, and seeing how different customers in different markets interact with coffee just broadens your mind and opens your eyes into what's possible. There's like this unspoken rule that at least barista champions, world barista champions, have not competed a second time. And part of this is because, the costs are very high. It's hard to be motivated again. Like the carrot doesn't shine as bright as it did when you didn't have it. I don't think I could do the work that it would take to do it again. And also don't need to spend my time doing that when I could spend it doing other competitions that are new and all fun for me. But I do think if you could go back as a world champion who's then had all this kind of global experience and then bring that to the stage, that would be fun. That would be exciting. I think career opportunities and stuff like that, it has been incredibly powerful. But what it really is it gives you 10, 15 minutes that people will listen to you anywhere in the world about coffee, right? So if you then want to learn something about something, you can send the email, reach out with the phone call, and you will get a response. And that's so powerful. And if I launch something or I start something, people give me a little more benefit of the doubt than I did when I was the second best barista in the UK, right? And sometimes I get really upset and frustrated by this because so much of the potential reward goes to the person who scores maybe 1 point more than somebody who's equally gifted and equally special. And that is a social problem. It's there in business, it's there in everything. And sometimes it just feels unfair. And so there's a responsibility to make the most of that opportunity, but also share some of the opportunities that come. But yeah, I have grown so much because of my success in competition. And I am so grateful for that. I've met so many incredible people that there's no chance I would have ever met them before. So yeah, it's been really powerful.
Take on it, just kind of reflecting on the competition. Do you think that the World Barista Championship promotes or hinders things like inclusivity, innovation, representation in the industry?
It's such a hard question, and we could definitely do a whole podcast just on that.
Yeah,
one,
I know there could
right?
be.
We could do a couple. I think society really gets in the way of some of those inclusivity and the right representation, or a balanced representation. I don't know that it's true that men are better competitors or males are. In fact, I know it's not true. They're not better competitors. There tend to be more males represented in the finals and whatever, and some of that is a more competitive urge or more support for men to be more competitive. I don't think there's anything in the structure of the rules that gets in the way of it, except for the fact that it takes time and support. So it's access to time and, money and time are very connected, and support and help. That's a requisite. And sometimes it's easy to see that in companies getting around male figures or proven success, right? So I don't think anything in the rules would need to change really to help better representation. Something needs to change in the support structure of the communities, maybe creating safe spaces where people can, and some people have put good effort to this, particularly in the US, around creating places where, okay, we're going to help you get ready for competition and you don't need to spend your own money. And I do think the competition as a whole has spent a lot of time and energy in trying to reduce the impact of needing to have expensive things on the stage, which is, you could argue at some points, is also at war with innovation, right? Because innovation is expensive, right? And you want the new machine and the new toy that no one's ever seen before. I think competition rewards the idea of innovation, but it gets expressed in very different ways. And there are ways of innovating that have nothing to do with spending money. Often that's not what we see on the biggest stage, because the biggest stage is the one with the most preparation and practice and effort and energy. If you win your national championships, someone will give you a toy but people don't see all of the national competitors or all of the competitors within the country and all the potential ideas that are there. They see the 6 finalists of the world at the very highest level and think that is the standard that everyone needs to achieve. So there's something about that pyramid of we all look at the winners that makes it a little dysfunctional. And one way of addressing that or fixing that is for every finalist you watch, you should watch somebody who didn't make the finals. And you'll be amazed at how much good innovation you pick up from the people that don't quite make it, that it is actually as useful and as valuable.
From Australia, I know I see the coffees that are being used in these competitions are these super wild, rare coffees and that. Like, I'm assuming it's hard to source these and get the right connects to get them. Like, are there certain countries that just struggle to compete that level simply just because of access to stuff?
Yeah, I think there's I mean, I guess what Dale's saying, I think there's systemic problems in our coffee community and cultural issues that are then reflected on the WBC stage, right? Representation is not equal. Access is not equal. Opportunity is not equal. And kind of Dale mentioned this earlier when he said, like, he saw someone like him up on stage and said, okay, I see this as a potential pathway for me. And I know that you were cognizant and recognizing that there's not a huge diversity of people in the history of world champions up on that stage. So it's not a recognized pathway. And I guess to your point, Rowan, is that the resourcing and even just access to the kinds of coffees that perform well within the structure of the competition, which is probably the one area where there is that challenge kind of from a format perspective, is that the kinds of coffees are not accessible in all locations. Like, there are a lot of coffee producing countries where you literally can't import other green coffees. And so then
that can be really fundamental in other ways. And like, if you live in Colombia, maybe Colombia's a bad. If you live in Peru, maybe you've never tasted coffee from Ethiopia, right? You've never tasted that jasmine kind of perfect like balance of a Yirgacheffe kind of thing. So that's just not in your vocabulary and reference point.
Yep.
Is there a world where they bring in a standard round of just like a set coffee? Like, I know they've done that in other comps and that kind of
brewers.
thing. Like, is there a world where it's like, hey, now we're all on the same level, brew this coffee and see how you do?
I can't say I've heard of anything. I've definitely heard conversations around it in the past and pros and cons and stuff like that. And again, it's that fight with innovation. We want it to be meaningful and do all these wonderful things. And sometimes we try and put too much on it and it might break. But I think at some point it will be part of the test. I actually saw, it's not a huge complaint, but the milk beverage as it is now is very flexible. It's very open to innovation. You can use alternative milks and any ratio of them. I think it can be a 30-ounce drink if you want. You shouldn't do that. That's my little cheat tip. Don't do that. But maybe you should.
Do. Yeah. 30-ounce drink.
I mean, they sell.
Yeah. The general public love them.
The definitions of that drink are really open to interpretation. There's lots of flexibility. I really like the idea of a standardized test that proves that you can do the thing. And so when I was first competing, even when I won, that was already the case. It was much more open. But when I first started competing, it was you make a cappuccino and it's a 5 to 6 ounce drink in a cup with a single shot of espresso and it should look like this. And actually that's a really important test, right? Because, and I don't think it's true that there are World Barista Champions who can't make a cappuccino, but it could be true, right? Because most of them are making a 1.5 ounce drink with freeze distilled milk. And some of the pours you see, you're like, that is ugly. Like, you should be, including the drinks that I've made in the past and on stage. And I think those standardized tests are really valuable. They're really important. And it kind of it becomes a slightly different game, but a valuable game. I think, are you ready for a hot take? Throw it in now.
Just throw it
in there.
It's even hotter when it comes out of nowhere,
Expensive coffees so I'm going to say specifically barista competition, or you could rephrase that as innovative process geisha, right? Being the only coffee that can win. And it has to cost at least, $150 per pound or whatever. I call bullshit on that. I think baristas are the problem there, right? I think, or competitors. And that's not entirely true, but I do think it's not entirely based in fact. When I won the World Championships, I did not have a geisha. It's
You
a
had a
very
coffee
specific
from
choice
Costa,
type.
right?
From El Salvador. Oh, yeah, from Costa, yeah. It was the traditional mocha.
Not Costa
Dahlia
Rica,
blend.
Costa.
I had an SL28 from El Salvador. It was a
Yeah.
fancy coffee, and the judges are looking for exceptional, extraordinary experiences. So I'm not saying that, you can rock up with an 80-point Brazil and you're going to be fine. It's not that. But there's such a huge gap between an 80-point Brazil and some of the, the $20,000 per pound, world record breaking auction price coffee or whatever, right? There's a big difference between those two things. And there are so many incredible coffees with incredible flavor profiles and incredible stories that are not auction winning coffees. And espresso, while the competition retains the rules it has now, espresso lets you hide a lot of things. It lets you highlight a lot of things, right? That's one of the skills of a barista, is creating amazing flavor from a coffee, whether it's a coffee you're given or it's a coffee you've chosen, right? There is a big, industry of coaching or whatever, where you're looking at what's succeeded and you're trying to replicate it. So it pushes people towards doing more of the same. And we need to do different things. The best competition would have 60 completely different ideas of what coffee can be being served. And I think actually the score sheet supports that. Everyone says, oh, you need these coffees you need a coffee that is balanced. But even then, when we're saying coffee, you need to serve a drink that is balanced, right? Sweetness, acidity, bitterness needs to work together. And it should have describable flavors, but even the weighting of that has gone down over the last few years to acknowledge the fact that different things can be good. However, people tend to do what they've seen other people succeed with and feel that they need to do that and they need to spend a lot of money, or it needs to be this style of coffee. And actually, I think a lot of judges and a lot of baristas prefer a different thing. So that's what they should be serving. Do something different. Stand out. What are you really excited about? A good Kenyan espresso has all the hallmarks and potential to win the WBC, as does a great Colombian coffee with its balance, or a great Indonesian coffee. And I deeply believe it's finding the best coffee for you as a barista at this moment, and the story you want to share and the flavors you want to share. Because there's so much in the rest of the score sheet around storytelling and presentation that you can craft the narrative and make that coffee work. I understand why people do spend a lot of money on coffee. It's almost like a crutch or a shorthand that the more you spend, that's validation on quality. Other people are agreeing that this is a good coffee, right? But there are other ways you could spend that money or that energy and achieve success. I also get that at the highest level, the risks feel really high. So you're risk averse and you want to do something that works. You want to succeed. But I think that's an area where we can be braver as an industry. And if you look statistically, so I was saying when I won, I didn't use a geisha, right? I was the only finalist not to use a geisha. I think there are some going for the gap psychology things that helped that be a successful strategy, though it wasn't a strategic choice. It was just what I wanted to serve. But everyone said, oh, you've got to use a geisha to win. And it was only years later that I look back, and actually not many geishas had won the World Championships before that. I think 2 out of 15, 16 years. It was just the most recent ones that are really present in people's minds. There are more incredible geishas out there now than there ever have been before. So it's easier to buy those coffees than it used to be. And there is more diversity there, but it's not the only idea of quality. I think part of the problem is if every competitor out of the 60 competitors competing brings a geisha, the winner will be a geisha. So it's a self-fulfilling cycle. If everyone brought a different coffee, it would change every year. I am confident.
Do you think that having too many of the similar styles of coffees and that, do the judges maybe get bored without even knowing it, of seeing it? Or can you be completely objective just in that one coffee? Or if someone comes in with an SL28 or whatever, or something completely different, is it hard not to avoid, oh, this is taking me somewhere different? Completely objective.
100% objective.
I shouldn't be asking him. I should be asking you.
By anything.
Yeah, but I think there's something about just standing out as well, or that breaking the mold, or having a new experience isn't going to hurt.
And I think the point here is be genuine to yourself and to your story and what you want to tell. Don't try and just follow the existing paths. You've obviously been through a lot of preparation and a lot of practice with this. You've gained a lot of insight. Can you give us the top couple of tips of techniques or ideas that the everyday barista could utilize from competition experience that you've had?
One, I'd say it's really boring, but take the technical score sheet and glue it somewhere near your espresso machine. It is not the best way to make coffee, right? They are both very simple things, and maybe they don't make the finest cup of coffee. People can argue, particularly like home baristas can argue about, should you flush before or after or whatever. I don't really care what the right answers are. There is something so powerful about consistency behind an espresso machine. Everyone doing the same thing every time. And so ticking those boxes and going through that methodology and maybe changing it, right, for your shop or for your situation, but like flushing the group every time, cleaning out the portafilter. These things matter. And you needed to become muscle memory to succeed in competition, but you also needed to become muscle memory to serve great coffee to your customers. The more people compete, the more they forget the value of the technical score and also how much it impacts things. So like you could be scoring high points on that and thinking, oh, that's the win. But the actual win is how that creates consistent flavors in your espresso, right? It's the result of the technical thing. That's where you score the value and the points, and how you impress your customers is when you do make those taste promises, they deliver because you're like a machine. You're like a robot behind the coffee. So embrace the technical score sheet. For all its flaws, it is a consistent way of making coffee, and you should tick those boxes every time, or you should be really intentional about the why you don't. Secondly, I'd say the value of communication. Competition does teach you to be a better communicator, and communication is everything. In the shop, in life, in whatever. It's a much more valuable skill than tamping. The only time I ever tamp is when I'm behind a coffee machine, and I barely do that these days as well, right? But I communicate about flavor every day. I think about flavor every day, and I'm only able to do that because competition has refined those skills. It's always forced me to refine those skills. So yeah, that's the one thing that I would take out is the weight and value of communication to how people experience their drinks.
Word to that.
Word
to that.
Preach. Ooh, getting a little hot in here.
You're a little overwarm? Are you a little toasty?
We've had the heating running all day because it was cold, but now it's heating up. I think it's time for an extra hot take with two sugars.
Woo!
What a segue. You can see by the look on Dale's face that he's terrified by what is coming here. Now, this is the section of the show where we do a little hot take, a little opinion on the industry or coffee, just something that's been on our nerves. Dale, do you have something for us on today's app?
Yeah, I had to think about this a lot, more than I thought I would, because, I'm always whinging about things in coffee. And this is also going to tie into like my industry ask whatever. It's like, we need to stop demonizing the middlemen. It's so easy to celebrate direct trade and this idea that like it's a perfect conversation between the barista and the farmer and that solves every problem. And, it's like purity is next to godliness and simplicity is great. Coffee is complex. There's so much complexity involved. Almost no coffee travels from origin to the roaster or the cafe without somebody else being involved. And almost everyone involved is adding value that needs to be paid for and supported and promoted. Great examples. I've worked with coffee exporters in Colombia who incredible coffees would not have been possible if they had not received, tasted, and fed back to those producers every day about the quality of their harvest, right? They take a small percentage, but they also create market access and opportunity for those producers in that region. And that happens in 50 countries within the coffee growing region. And there are people on the other side who run warehouses and finance institutions that if we didn't have those to rely on, we wouldn't have great coffee either, right? So some of it's really boring, but all of those people add value. We should right size the value. We should make sure that everyone's getting an equitable part of that, of the pie. But we shouldn't hide those facts or go with the simple answers. We should always embrace complexity. And my experience has been customers actually love it. They want to hear the truth. They want to hear the nitty-gritty. The easy answers are so forgettable.
That's pretty good. That's pretty solid.
That's a very good one.
And I feel like we've had a couple of people who are shouting out about this similar kind of conversation of recognize the value that and the incredible skill needed at some of those different points in the chain.
Yeah. I think it came up a couple.
Katie was mentioning it. Katie
it's a good
from,
kind of thing to kind of start because I feel like sometimes in the community we start talking about something or an idea gets spread and then that's kind of just the way that it's viewed. But I think sometimes it takes a few people to step up and be like, maybe we should reassess our feelings about this. Speaking about feelings, Ben Bicknell, have you got any feelings?
Oh, I've got feelings.
Oh,
have I got feelings? They're all coming out here.
Feelings.
All right. Well, so my hot take today is that I think that there's an incredible amount of knowledge and value that's left in the black hole of the competition stage, right? Now, I don't know if that makes complete sense, but let me unpack it for you. Competitors, whether at a national or a global level, have put in all of this time and energy and research into knowing these incredible things about coffee and preparation and a story and where it's from. And it all goes up on stage. And as Dale mentioned, it's videoed now, but still, it's not a competitor kind of friendly performance space. And there's this whole thing that if you want to learn about something that's said on there, you've got to watch this like 15-minute presentation and not taste any of the coffees that are shown. There's all of that knowledge up there that the industry is generating and no good way of getting it out for the industry to actually make use of. You've kind of got to have this, someone's got to write a blog about it or do a podcast about it. But I just think there's a lot of lost opportunity up there.
What do you think the ways that you could solve this is? Like, is it a way for the competition afterwards to document in a better way these learnings and performances? Maybe make like a short form series each year about each competitor and the main takeaways and that kind of thing? Or
I mean, I think it has been attempted a few times, and I think some of the best like live commentary sessions have actually helped do that a lot when they're like tweeting or kind of commenting online about like, oh, well, this competitor's coming on and what they've just said is this, this, and this, and they break it down into something that's a bit more actionable.
Yep.
I just think that we should put some collective effort into that because there's a lot of wasted value there.
All right.
What about you, buddy? What's your hot take today?
Well, at the risk of offending our amazing guest here, the next World Barista Champion could just be an amazing paid actor. You've got so many people working behind the scenes. They don't have to pick the coffee if they don't want. They don't have to make up the recipe for the drink. You could just have a team of people, hire just the best performer, get it all ready, put them out on the stage, and they could win the competition. Get Daniel Day-Lewis up on the stage, performing his heart out and telling this story, and they could be the next World Barista Champion.
What do you think, Dale?
Like a bit of me is, I just want to be a dick. And I'm just like, what's wrong with that? Right, we can train someone to do it. That's fine. Great.
Nothing. I reckon we do the social experiment of turning me into the next World Barista Champion.
Oh, yeah. Just the social
Dale,
experiment.
you're my judge. You're my coach. Coach 2. Bring him in. Let's do it.
Yeah. No, I think people have done things along this. There have definitely been inexperienced baristas. And I was, an inexperienced barista the first competition I had. And I had, relative success early on because I was a good presenter. I do think this is why some parts of the competition may be intentional, maybe not really well designed, right? The fact that you have to do 3 rounds of the Worlds means that there's 3 chances for you to make mistakes. And normally what happens is when somebody doesn't have either lots of experience competing or lots of experience behind bar, when they make a mistake, they fall apart. And actually, even incredible, I've definitely done it on stage at the highest level. I've fallen apart. You've made a mistake and it's just stuck in your head too much or it's disrupted your flow and it's hard to get it back. So I think anyone can win once by luck, right? The right moment, the right coffee, the right time, the right flavors. You can pull a great shot now and again. To pull a couple really good espressos or a couple double espressos really well consistently requires technical skill and muscle memory. To do it 3 times or 6 times, across your nationals or whatever, and deliver on the flavors and deliver on the words, that's hard for any performer. It gets easier with, as equipment keeps improving and stuff like that. And that's always one of the questions earlier was like, how does competition impact thing? And like competition has changed the way machines are made, right? It's things that competitors have valued or said they've valued have ended up being in machines. And some of it's been right and some of it's been wrong, but it's definitely never been easier if you've got the money to buy a great espresso machine that's going to do most of the work for you, right? It's going to tamp for you. It's going to, you don't need to, get too into the weeds, but you don't need to measure your dose with your finger anymore. And that is progress for all of us.
Yeah.
That is just progress for all.
Moved on. Yep. I could see Daniel Day-Lewis just like tap, scooping it out. Yeah. He's on. Yeah. A little bit of massaging it in.
I mean, there's also this thing like with Foley artists and like in movies and stuff like that. The things that people see that they assign value to are often not the things that create real value, right? So if you got someone to produce like a movie of what they think making good coffee looks like, they could watch people and do the accurate thing, and then the audience might not value it. Because people want to hear the noise. They want to hear the steamer going off. They want to hear the tap of the tamper and stuff like that. You're like, that's not good coffee.
Yeah.
Texture.
Oh
and the
man, if you watch
resonance.
some of those old school like Italian baristas, they're like flipping and tapping things and scooping it up, and it looks incredible. It looks like a dance. And then if you were to taste the coffee, I'm sure you'd be in shock horror.
It depends what you value, Yeah.
If you value really bitter coffee, then you'll love it.
Yeah. So I think we've had some great little hot takes there. That's all really good to get the brain cells ticking away. But let's spread a little bit of love. Dale, is there someone out there in the coffee world who you think deserves to have the light shone on them a little bit more, and you want to do a bit of a shout out to them?
Yeah, so I'm going to cheat in this, and I'm going to shout out multiple people and a project that I've been involved in.
Did you not read the rules that we sent you beforehand? They've actually changed from last year.
I won't be the best It's Just Coffee champion, right? But that's okay. You got to take
participation award.
Yeah.
Over the last few weeks and months, I've been working with this program called Coffee Futures Fund, which has been a really enjoyable experience. You guys can share a link to it. I don't want to go too much in the detail of that, but it's a cohort of business owners who are, learning together for 10 weeks on a program about, improving their business and making it better. And there's a prize of, some investment opportunities at the end. As part of it, I'm working as a mentor for 2 businesses. And it is one of the most powerful experiences I've had in a long time. And this is one of the things, when you stop competing, you're missing this energy, this thing that happens. And when you're coaching, you get to vicariously live it through another barista. And this is a very similar thing. So I'm mentoring these 2 businesses, and it just fills me with so much optimism about coffee and the people in our business and in our industry. So I'm working with Ivan, who runs Recuerdos Coffee in Atlanta. And it is this beautiful business concept about nostalgia and memories really tied to quality. He is a great guy. I cannot wait to visit his shop, which also sounds beautiful because it's in a beautiful. He's partnering with a pastry chef who has like a late night dessert spot that she's opening, and he's running the coffee during the day, and they're kind of using the space mutually. He's doing a lot of signature drinks that are like inspired by his Mexican heritage and ingredients and brewing styles and things like that, whilst bringing that kind of traditional side together with specialty coffee. And he's just great. So if you're in Atlanta, visit, support Ivan. And if you're not in Atlanta, go. But follow his Instagram. He's telling great stories. I'm also working with Adava, who is based in Austin, Texas, and a couple who have this kind of cool coffee stand that is also touching on like nostalgia, but from a different community, from a South Asian community. And they set up this mission that they are gonna bring in containers of Indian coffee to a market that's not really used to it and promote this because they love and value the kind of the cultural traditions of that space, but also the farming traditions of that space, and they want to share that. And both of these businesses that are starting from small things, there's so much positivity and energy and so much opportunity. And I just want to see them succeed. So if you're in Austin, Texas, go to Dava, give them some love, buy one of their unique drinks. If you're in Atlanta, go to Ivan and Rick.
Beautiful shout out.
Love it.
He broke the rules, but I'm giving him
That's okay.
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
That's okay.
He gets a solid 10 right there.
Yes.
People's champion, right?
Yeah, exactly. The voted champion. That brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for joining us and for all that beautiful insight into your experience with being the World Barista Champion and helping mentor the future kind of competitors and those that will be doing it themselves. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about Dale Harris?
Yeah. So I have 2 Instagram channels now. I'm really bad at branding. So instead of using my name, they have to search for Acoustic Coffee, which I said I was going to set up this little folk cafe. That's when the handle happens.
Love it.
So you can find out all about me there, and you can follow that also to, I am in the process of setting up a little business, a new roastery, which is my coffee and my way. And just like with competition, I'm trying to like break some of my rules that I've set myself in the past and try and do things a little bit differently. So that is Ithaca, ITHAKA.coffee. And I also need your support. So order some coffee, try it, give me feedback. All of that would be super cool.
Will do.
Go right now, Go to your podcast channel first, subscribe to us, and then open up a browser and go across to Ithaca Coffee, was it?
That's right.
Ithaca Coffee with a K in Ithaca.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Again, branding is still my strong point. I went with a word that most people can't pronounce, and it has such an esoteric meaning,
Beautiful. It's beautiful. It's memorable.
Go and buy some coffee. And then once you're done with that, you can send us any questions or anything that you want to hear from us at hello@itsjustcoffeepod.com. As I said, we've got some amazing stuff coming up. We've just talked World Barista Championships. We're going to be at the World Barista Championships. We're going to be talking to a lot more amazing people. But I'm going to say it now. None more amazing than Dale Harris.
Oof. Peaking 2017.
And you actually said you had this one amazing experience with Dale that you wanted to share at the end of the podcast. It might be a bit embarrassing, but what was that experience?
Yeah, it was just that time that he came to Melbourne and he basically took over a cocktail bar and just started practicing for Coffee and Good Spirits. I'm just making this story up on the spot right here and right now, but it could have happened. It was a really good night.
All right, we'll see you next time, guys.
Woo!